Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, my very special guests are Jamie Lee and Bruce Hillyer. Jamie is a former investment banker and the man behind the popular website and YouTube channel called A Plain Truth. He is an alternative researcher exposing the dark agendas that many in the truth community won't touch. Bruce is the person behind the website The Modern Gnostic and spent 20 years in the insurance and financial industry with a Fortune 100 company, and after personally experiencing the financial crash of 2008, decided to dive deep into the rabbit hole and unravel the sinister agenda undermining humanity. In this show, Jamie and Bruce will talk to us about the Jesuits, who they are, along with helping us understand the staggering level of power and control they possess, and how that influence is used to bring about their world order of total domination over humankind. And to start the conversation, I asked both Jamie and Bruce to tell us a bit about their journey in life, and here is what they had to say.
My background goes back to beginning a career on Wall Street in the 80s, where I worked as a clerk on the floor of the stock exchange and worked up to the investment banking firm of a firm in New York. And then I went to a banking firm in San Francisco, Robertson Coleman Stevens. And then from there, I started my own company in 91, a small research investment boutique. And then from there, I went and started discovering, like you and I talk about, 9/11 was a great awakening for me and the energy crisis and whatnot. And so I ended up moving up to the country and started just doing a whole bunch of reading, researching for the past 6 to 8 years, about 6 to 8 hours a day, and just learning just these really occulted truths and using my Wall Street experience with research and being able to look kind of like about how the nuts and bolts of systems work to get where I'm at today. So I'm just happy to share some of my research with you guys.
Excellent. Bruce, how did you get started?
My background's somewhat similar to Jamie's. I actually started in insurance with a Fortune 100 company. I worked up through management, and then I decided to get into financial services after the market crash, the dot-com crash, and then the subsequent 2007-2008 real estate bubble. Found myself back to square one after both situations. I then had a lot of questions about what I was doing and the advice that I was getting, and I ended up meeting somebody who started showing me the real ins and outs of finances and how the banks work, and that's where I was exposed to the Federal Reserve System. I then matriculated that and said, well, if it's happening in this particular sector, what about in other industries? And that kind of got me rolling, and I never really looked back. And it just took off, and everywhere I looked, I kept seeing the same cast of characters and was able to take all that and kind of triangulate it and say, well, this is a lot bigger than just the financial sector. I ended up really going, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it really just woke me up, and I haven't really looked back since.
How did you guys connect? Because you guys work together, right?
Yes, we do. Jamie, why don't you handle that one?
Oh, it's very serendipitous. I've had my websites, Taboo blog, tabublog.com, and I noticed that there was comments coming in from the Modern Gnostic, and I started commenting back, and it was just one of those things. We started commenting on each other's sites, and then we picked up the phone after a few weeks, started talking, and it's been 1 to 2 hours a day, but our backgrounds he lives on the East Coast, Bruce does, and I live on the West Coast, but we both worked on Wall Street. We both have adopted children. We've just had extremely, extremely similar backgrounds. It was one of those things, and then it's almost like we almost finish each other's sentences, and some of Bruce's great strengths are some of my weaknesses, and some of my weaknesses are his great strengths, so we complement each other very well. So it's been about, I don't know, what, Bruce, 4 or 5 months now into it? And we've never met each other. It's been online, so it's been wonderful. He's helped educate me a lot too, so it's been great.
We wouldn't have come to a lot of conclusions or come to where we are today. I wouldn't without some of his pieces and vice versa. So it just happened that way, and it worked out. It's worked out great.
Okay, great. So now tonight we're going to get into a topic that, again, some people have heard about the Jesuits. Some people have never heard of the Jesuits. The people who have heard of them do not really understand the power and the control that they have. Most people have heard about the Illuminati, the Council of 13, the Committee of 300, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, and so on and so forth. But the Jesuits, in my view, is a whole different ball of wax. And at the end of the day, most of all of what I just mentioned culminates into the Jesuit order. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
I would say absolutely yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So how do we start with who are the Jesuits? So for the folks out there that are listening to the show, Jesuits 101, how do we explain to them who they are? Where do we start?
The Jesuits have been in power under Vatican. They're essentially the military arm of the Vatican. They have their military arm of the Jesuits is called the Knights of Malta. You may have heard of the Maltese Cross. Christopher Columbus on his ships had the Maltese Cross, the red shield. Red shield is related to the Rothschilds, which means red shield. And they were founded under the Vatican to establish basically rule over all dominion over all what they call heretics and Christians. And because they're the divine right of God, they have the right, and they put it into Roman Latin law, which we're still under today. Also, our currency is under Roman currency as well, maritime law. And so it's all tied back to the Vatican, which is part of the trilateral. You may have heard of the Trilateral Commission. Well, they refer to the three city-states of Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican. And each of these city-states are beholden to no country, have their own mayor, their own police force, actually their own constitution, which we can get into a little bit later. And they've just decided that because Roman Catholicism has to be the overarching power that is the representative of God, and since they're the representative, they get to make the rules, that they hold dominion of all souls and all land. And they passed some laws back in the 13 and 1400s, what we can get into under trusts, and that's how our Roman Latin law system got established that we're still using today. They rule by secrecy. They're masters of deception. If you've heard their name, if you see them in power, they have handlers. They have people right behind them or right next to them to make sure that they don't get out of line. And those are the names you don't hear, which we'll be bringing up a little bit later. But basically, they've been behind the scenes for a very long time. They've caused a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. Just the Spanish Inquisition is one. World War II, Operation Keyhole, when they sent over 5 million Orthodox Christians back to Russia after World War II in sealed cars with Dwight D. Eisenhower and FDR's approval. And those people were basically either put in the gulags or killed when they arrived in Russia because they fled Russia to get away from World War II, and then they were sent right back. So they've held military power, and they use it through what they call Jesuit assistancies. And these assistancies are in Central Europe, East Europe, South Europe, West Europe, North Latin America, Africa, East Asia, South Latin America, and the USA assistancy. And through these assistancies and through their religious connections, they are able to affect policies of their own secret ways to influence governments, to influence the financial world, to influence the media, whatever direction they want to take. And when you get into the whole legacy of the Jesuits, you're going back easily 500 to 1,000 years or more. And maybe Bruce, you can talk about that from 1,000 years ago, how they got started with that.
You know, they do everything is in a veil of secrecy, so we try to piece together as much as we can. I do want to read you a quote here, which I think everybody has heard of, but maybe the origins are a little bit cloudy, is the ends justifies the means. That is the Jesuit maxim. So whatever it takes to get it done, regardless of collateral damage, doesn't matter. They're going to do what they're going to do, and that's because their sole aim is to accomplish that specific task.
What is it that they're trying to get done?
Ultimately, what they're trying to get done is to bring in the New World Order. And what is the New World Order, right?
Right.
The New World Order is going back to the old way it was, the old world order, which is a feudal serf system, fascism, global fascism, period. That's it really, and that's all it is in a nutshell. But I'd like to read you a quick quote here, which I find very interesting. It says, "My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but is supported by the unquestionable authorities and is very particular and very horrible. The Jesuit order's restoration in 1814 by Pope Pius VII is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell, it's the Society of Jesus, or Ignatius de Loyola, who was the founder, Ignatius Loyola. John Adams, 1735 to 1826, second president of the United States. And throughout our talk today, I think we'll be able to deposit many good quotes there, right, Jamie?
Well, I just was looking at another one from John Adams. My history, not from John Adams, from Woodrow Wilson. Since I entered politics, I've chiefly had men's views confided to me privately, some of the biggest men in the United States. They know that the power is somewhere is organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. Samuel Morse of Morse Code. The Jesuits are a secret society, a sort of Masonic order with super added features of revolting odiousness and 1,000 times more dangerous. Washington had quotes also on the Jesuits. The Jesuits assassinated Abraham Lincoln. The Stuarts, John and Mary Stuart. John Stuart got an asylum in the Vatican after the assassination, and that was the reason that the United States did not have diplomatic relations since the assassination of Lincoln all the way until 1986, I believe, when Ronald Reagan reestablished, quote, the Holy Alliance that was put on the cover of Time magazine. Napoleon Bonaparte. The Jesuits are a military organization, not a religious order. Their chief is the general of an army, not the mere father abbot of a monastery. And the aim of this organization is power. Power in its most despotic exercise. Absolute power, universal power, power to control the world by the volition of a single man. Jesuitism is the most absolute of despotisms and at the same time the greatest and most enormous of abuses. So we have just many, many, many quotes of the Jesuit order, but it was never been brought to the common day forefront of knowledge. We're never taught anything about this. This was a Canadian historian, J.E.C. Shepherd. Between 1555 and 1931, the Jesuit Society of Jesus was expelled from at least 83 countries, states, and cities for engaging in political intrigue and subversion plots against the welfare of the state, according to the records of the Jesuit priest of repute, Thomas Campbell. Practically every instance of expulsion was for political intrigue, political infiltration, political subversion, and inciting to political insurrection. So this was all said to be founded back in, I believe, 1540, when St. Ignatius Loyola created the Society of Jesuits, and the Pope sanctioned it. And that's when they're said to have started, but it actually goes back to the 13 satanic bloodlines of ancient Rome, who were behind the scenes that empowered Ignatius Loyola. And Bruce can probably talk a little bit about those 13 bloodlines that put Loyola into power.
Jamie had mentioned Jesuitism. You can look up Jesuitism in the dictionary, and it will say a principle or practice as casuistry, equivocation, or craft ascribed to the Jesuits by their opponents. And when you look at what is called casuitism or casuistry, and this is strictly a Jesuit. This is a Jesuit function. Specious, deceptive, or over-subtle reasoning, especially in questions of morality, fallacious or dishonest application of general principles or sophistry, the application of general ethical principles to particular cases of conscience or conduct. So they're always changing and morphing and changing definitions, moralities, ethics, and they're always doing that on a consistent basis to keep people on their heels and really never being able to get to the bottom of the whole thing or get to the top of it, whichever way you want to look at it. So a lot of it is done through very, very, I would say,
it's deception,
very deceptive.
Right? Yeah.
Well, that's their whole thing is deception.
Yeah.
So they always want to be in the background. And as you've heard before, if you see them, they're not the ones in charge.
Very interesting. So let me ask this question here before we move a little further down the timeline here. Do they control the Vatican?
100%. Jamie, I think you'll agree with that too.
Yeah, and their rulership is the church to rule worldwide, the Pope to rule the church state, and the Jesuits to rule the Pope. That's under their command and control. Vicar, which is the representative, the Pope Vicar, representative of God, comes from the word vicarious. So the vicarious Christ literally means the Antichrist. So what we're dealing with here is a false religion, a pseudo-religion masked to hide the satanic, evil, Luciferian principles. They're all-seeing eye. Osiris is not just an occult symbolism. They're watching over everybody. They have a pope called the Black Pope, which is about 6 levels above the white pope. The current Black Pope is Adolfo Nicholas. The superior general, this is from their documents, the superior general hears all, sees all, does all, yet in appearance does nothing. The eye of the general surveys the world to its farthest bounds. There is nothing done which he does not see by 1,000 eyes, hear by 1,000 ears, and when has a behest to execute, he can select the fittest agent for an innumerable host, all of whom are ready to do his bidding. So we see a Jesuit order, Catholic clergy, operating as a papal and royal military. It's very subversive. There's about 13,500 priest members who have taken the fourth vow, and I don't have that up right now, but we should read that fourth vow. And the vow is disgusting to read in its entirety, and to read what they're committed to is total allegiance to the Pope. So the allegiance to the Pope came about in the Protestant Reformation because the Pope said, "My word is God," where the Protestants said, well, the scriptures, we can read the scriptures for ourselves and you're not God. So that's when they broke away and they had the Protestant Reformation, and then they had to be reeled back in, and it involved the kings and played out with Spain, who's very high powered with the Jesuits. And the Jesuits are geographically organized by 91 provinces, of which those 10 assistancies I read are around the world. The Military Order of Malta, which is the Maltese Cross, has about 12,500 members, and their secret society, Opus Dei, has about 26,000 celibate members, and it's headed by the Society General. So it's a military operation. They call them generals. And he has 4 assistants to provide care through the assistancies. They have secret instructions. There was a moneta secreta, which was found, which was the secret instructions for the Jesuits, and it told how they go about doing all their bad deeds around the world in secret and not being seen. They are the masters of deception. It's really, after all the research I'd done and just a couple years ago start to get learned on them, it was a real eye-opening to see who was behind the power really running the show. And then they celebrate it in movies like Men in Black and V for Vendetta. They had the gunpowder plot with Guy Fawkes that's celebrated in the V for Vendetta. That was a Jesuit operation to get Princess Elizabeth to the throne. It had nothing to do with abolishing Parliament, but that's the story we learned.
And Pope Francis, the Pope that is out front, the veneer for the rest of the world, is a Jesuit also, correct?
First ever.
Yeah, and when you get into it, I mean, it's also the first pope that has stepped down. Ratzinger stepped down, and it was told it was because of all the child pedophilia. So in comes the first ever Jesuit pope who ruled over the dirty wars. He was Archbishop of Argentina during the dirty wars down there in the 80s. And so here we have just really bad people and their history of being bad. And in between, they're being made up to be these great, wonderful, helping the poor type of people. And it just makes me ill when I see Pope Francis going around the country or the world saying we got to help the poor, while the Vatican has more wealth than all of us put together. They could sell just a few of their underground vaults and all debt in the world would be cleared. It's just really bad the way they hide everything.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is staggering. It really is.
Yeah, and bringing it, Mike, to current, I mean, we find that the Obama team, the Catholic kitchen cabinet, as they're called, it includes Senator Bob Casey, Governor Tim Kaine, Representative Patrick Murphy, Senator Ted and his wife Victoria Kennedy, Senator Richard Durbin, Senator John Kerry, Patrick Leahy, Mike Capiano, Representative Lacey Clay. They're all Catholic, Roman Catholic school trained. The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, went to St. Mary's. Robert Codillo, the Director of Intelligence, schooled at Georgetown. Deputy National Security Advisor Tom Dolan, Catholic University of America. Biden, connected to the Biden family. Robert Snyder, Director of Intelligence Program. John Brennan, Assistant President for Homeland Security. Dennis McDonough is the Chief of Staff for Obama. Communications Director Dan Pfeiffer, speechwriter John Favreau. They all went to Jesuit Roman Catholic schools. Obama's community organizing in the 80s. John Kelman, he was a Catholic minister. John Gregory Caluzzo was his advisor as a Jesuit priest. Reagan administration also had their fill of CIA Director and Knight of Malta George Tenet, CIA Director Skull and Bonesman Porter Goss, Joe Biden, Catholics. Donald Rumsfeld didn't finish, but he went to Georgetown University. John Brennan trained at Jesuit Fordham University, CIA Director 2003. Gordon Liddy of Nixon FBI, he went to Fordham. Trump went to Fordham. Hillary and Bill Clinton went to Georgetown University. Senator Alexander Haig went to Secretary of State, went to Georgetown. Robert Gates, Secretary of Defense, PhD from Georgetown. Former Chief of Operations for Blackwater in Iraq, Joseph Schmitz, Knights of Malta, Opus Dei. John C. Gannon and Robert Beardsworth were crucial in the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, were both Jesuit trained. Caspar Weinberger, former Secretary of Defense, Knights Grand Cross of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. I don't have the school he went to, but it was a Catholic school. Going to Georgetown, we had King Abdullah of Jordan, former National Security Advisor General James Jones. Fidel Castro attended 3 Jesuit institutions. He comes from old royal blood family from Spanish lines. Santa Clara University, the Jesuit School of Technology out in California, they graduated Leon Panetta, CIA for Obama. Janet Napolitano, who used to be the head of the Department of Homeland Security, is now the head of head regent at the University of California school system. She went to Santa Clara. Jerry Brown, the governor of California, Jesuit, went to Santa Clara. His dad, Pat Brown, was a member of Opus Dei, who was governor of California before that. Gavin Newsom, the mayor of San Francisco, Santa Clara University. Ron Paul was associated with John McManus, the president of Holy Cross. 6 out of 9 Supreme Court justices are religious Roman Catholics. Antonio Sciala, who just got knocked off recently, yep. Xavier High School, Georgetown University. John Roberts, Sam Oliotto, General Peter Pace, Michael Peter Jackson, Alberto Gonzalez. These are all names that you may have heard of. General
Anthony Kennedy too, right?
Yep. Well,
Justice
Kennedy
Anthony
broke away from them, and that's why they took him out. Peter Pace, David Pietrus, the general who had the sex scandal lodged against him. Baron Conrad Hilton, Nicholas Brady, General Alexander Haig, Pat Buchanan, Alan and Avery Dulles, the CIA and Secretary of States for the United States back after World War II. John McCone, Joseph and Ted Kennedy, but not John Kennedy. Lee Iacocca, Edward Hoover, Heinrich Himmler, the right-hand man to Hitler. Bowie Kuhn, sports owner. Clay Shaw, who was allegedly the killer of helped with the JFK assassination. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. were Knights of Malta members. Tip O'Neill, Henry Luce of Time Magazine, William Casey, CIA. Henry Luce's wife, Dame Claire Booth Luce. Prescott Bush was a member. Frank Captor, the director of movies. Jeb Bush is a 4th degree Knights of Columbus. Shriners, who are also affiliated, John Wade, Gerald Ford, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. I mean, this list, I've got 20, 30 more names on here. They're all affiliated to the Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, all of these secret organizations that are all admittedly ruled from the Vatican and the Society of Jesus. And there's just too many names for this to be a coincidence.
Now, Jamie, you mentioned a couple of schools. So are we to assume that there are certain schools that if these elites have graduated or have gone to these schools, that it's a pretty good indicator that they're involved in the Jesuit order or the Knights of Malta? You mentioned Georgetown University and Fordham University. Are there others?
There's I don't have a list in front of me, but there's I think 25 Roman Catholic universities around the country, but Fordham is located in New York City. New York's called the Empire State. Georgetown was founded 1 year before Washington, D.C. in 1870 by a guy named John Carroll. John Carroll was the richest man in the United States at the time. He was a Jesuit trained at schools over in England. He donated the land to form Washington, D.C. Why was it named the District of Columbia? And what is it a district of? like a district attorney, is part of a bigger district. Third question is, what was the name of the city before it was Washington, D.C.?
No.
Rome, Maryland.
Rome, Maryland. Okay.
It had 7 hills and a Capitoline Hill, just like in Rome. And when they brought out the Independence Day, the Declaration, the independence from Britain, the War of Independence in 1812, we're going to hang together, hang separately. First thing they did to design their flag, they went to Betsy Ross, which is another false story. And Betsy said to John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and George, well, what colors do you want our new country? What color flag? Because flags are really important, the symbol of our country. They looked across the pond. They said, hey, those British got really cool colors. Why don't we use the same colors as them and just leave out the cross? I mean, it's just, you get back to the history of our founding of our country. No one knows why the federal government was created in 1871 with the Organic Act. Nobody knows that the United States of America, in capital letters, is a corporation that was founded in that year and donated by the Jesuits, with the year before they established Georgetown for command and control.
Yeah.
We are the New Jerusalem. And what they set up in the New Jerusalem was the new experiment. And the one thing, Mike, about the Jesuits I've learned is they are very, very patient, and they are very long-term planners. They have a long, long line of just waiting till the right time to execute what they need to do, and then they will wait even longer to get revenge. They're very revengeful. So when they created this country, created the federal government, they changed the language from the United States of America to the United States for America.
Yep.
And since we're under Roman Latin law, you got to go to dictionaries and figure it all out. But basically what this did is put us under the corporation, where President Obama is the CEO of the corporation. And that's why we have secretaries and treasuries in the White House and in the Congress and in the Supreme Court. It's all part of the same corporation. So when we pay our money to the federal government, we are paying into a corporation. And so what they do, Mike, is they put us all on ships in the legalese sense of the word, because we're under Roman Latin law, as I said. And here's another one. What's the word Latin mean? Nobody knows what the word Latin means. Well, that goes back to Rome. It's part of the way they roll. And so when they created this all, they put us all on our ships, ownerships, partnerships, relationships, scholarships. And this is part of the maritime law, where they created these trusts back in the 13 and 1400s, these SQDs, or what's called testamentary trusts. And these 3 trusts basically said, well, since God owns and Jesus owns all the land and all the souls, we're going to create trusts to take care of them. And so the first trust was called an unum sanctum and said all souls are lost at sea. And this is under maritime law. The Vatican's called the Holy See. And so we're going to claim rights to them. The second trust, I forget the name of, Roman Pontifex. That was the establishment of all lands being owned by God. So we'll set up a trust for that. And then just like in a will, you have a pour-over will. They created the third trust as a pour-over will. And so they've claimed our whole existence and created these fictitious characters. So when you go into court on your citizenship and you enter your docket, or when you go into your river bank with your currency and make your deposit slips and then you account for it with your frozen assets and your liquid assets, it's all based on water.
Yeah.
It's all based on us being on our ships. And once we're in this fictitious world, when you get your bank statement back, it's in capital letters. When you get your Social Security card, it's in capital letters. When you see the United States of America in capital letters, we're all under this corporation. And so there's a big sovereign, people are waking up to this straw man, it's called, and they're actually breaking away and going into courts and saying, no, I'm not ruled by you. I'm not name you say I am. And they're resigning from the corporations. When you get your driver's license, it's a privilege. You're under commerce law. All these things are designed to keep us enslaved and to not have, they refer to us as chattel in their legal definitions. They refer to us in their governments as human resources. This is what they think of us.
Right.
Soldiers, the word soldier, which many people don't know, the word soldier means sold to die. And Kissinger called them dogs, and that's why they have dog tags. I mean, nobody wants to hear this stuff. It's not pleasant to hear, but it needs to get out that we were formed under this corporation since 1871, and that's why nothing will ever change. Nothing will ever change until we get rid of this system that enslaves us all under this legalese system, which is copyrighted, and they've owned the system for a long, long time. But with this disclosures now, I think a lot more people are going to start seeing through the veil, and they're not going to be able to hide anymore.
Well, I've been talking about this for a very long time, Jamie, about the fact that we are being governed and administered to by admiralty law. And the problem is that trying to get people to understand why it's not a good thing is a very, very difficult job to undertake, because I think what happens is people don't know what the alternative really is. This apparatus that's in place, it masquerades as the organic republic with the organic constitution and so on. So the question I have, and you can answer it or Bruce can answer it, when somebody asks, okay, this is good information, so we're being ruled by a corporation, so what? What does it mean to me at the end of the day? How is my life going to be better if it's not ruled by a corporation? How do you respond to that?
It's interesting you say that, because that's the exact same stuff I get. Well, what does it matter?
Right.
What does it matter if they've lied to us for 500 years? What does it matter if we're under a corporation? Well, they've got us so under the thumb where all of our electricity, all of our water, all of our food come from them. Our banking system, our currency, everything comes that they've created that we are beholden to live. How are you going to live if the water doesn't show up tomorrow? How do kids, how are you going to live if your smartphone doesn't boot up in the morning? So you have to be into the system. You have to believe that someone is going to be taking care of you, because they've created the nanny state, the blue and the red. Why do we have only two choices, Coke or Pepsi, paper or plastic, or blue or red elections? It's all theater just to keep us from thinking we have power, to taking away the power of our own authors, of our own authority. No longer do I want someone telling me, I own a ranch and I own nothing on the property, but if I don't pay property taxes, I grow my own food, I have my own energy, I have my own water, I'll go to jail.
Right.
So that means somebody else owns me. I don't want anyone else to own me. I am an independent human being. I am not under some legalese creation that I was born into through the birthing certificate that was created in 1933 from the bankruptcy laws with FDR that we never got out of. And the bankers created the birth certificate so that us chattel would be owned at birth, and we'd be a securitized number that's actually traded on the New York Stock Exchange as a debt servitude to the bankers from way back in 1933. So when they want to run up to the date like $20 trillion in debt today, where every person in this country owes over $180,000 of obligated debt that doesn't get forgiven, the more these guys run up the debt, the more our children are owned, the more their children's children are owned. So everyone should be absolutely just shocked that they've created this system, an ownership society of command and control, and that the laws that were made to enslave you. If you think about taxes, when you pay your taxes, you'll ask someone, well, if you're against the $1 trillion being spent to go invade other countries under false pretenses, if you're against the 0.5% making more wealth, or the bailout, the what was that called, the TARP bailout, $850 billion in 2008 that was given to the bankers, and then all the bad loans was put on our balance sheet, that's all future obligation to our children. Well, you guys got to wake up, because there's no future. And so when they tax you, everybody says the same thing. I ask, why do you pay your taxes? They all say the same thing. The reason everybody says that I talk to says, because I'll go to jail, enforcement. So using force to pay taxes or threat of force, to me, that's slavery. The system has been set up, and then like everybody in the country and everybody hearing this will start nodding their heads, they're dinging us to death. They're adding taxes everywhere. They're adding fines everywhere, violations. There's some 26 million laws, codes, violations, infractions that they can collect money from you. Every time you see the word association, every county is an association. They're a corporation. Every government is a corporation. California is a corporation. They're all for-profit businesses. So they need to make money off of you. So they need to ding you. But all of these laws, we're never taught what these laws are. We're never taught, but ignorance of the law is no excuse. They catch you in this catch-22, ignorance of the law is no excuse. But they add like 10,000 laws, state, local, and federal every year, and now international law on top of it. And our system is set up that if you challenge the system, you have to go up through the system from your local community to the state, to the federals, and now to international law. So they get you in the system when you try to do the right thing and go through the legal process. And it's just one more way they just own us. So what we did in California, and we made history here in Mendocino County last year, is we passed what's called Measure S. And Measure S declared sovereign rights of authority over state and federal law, and that the Community Bill of Rights in our county trump any state or federal laws. The first time the law had been passed. Unfortunately, the people in the county don't understand the power behind it to declare they're author of their own authority and decide in their communities how to manage their own water systems, how to manage their own communities. I think that will take hold as we go down the road, but that's the kind of action that has to happen, because everybody, if you want to take down the system, you're never going to, they've been entrenched for too long. You have to start doing the Bucky Fuller thing and design something better that when intelligence, higher consciousness comes up, people automatically go, well, yeah, that's a better way. Let's start doing that. So that's the positive action of taking this all and then creating the kind of what I call new visions of much better ways on the worlds we want to see. But boy, you're fighting a lot of programming that's been going on like for hundreds and hundreds of years through the school systems and the government system. So they established all these non-government organizations and funded them all, and they funded the National Education, endowed the National Education Association. Rockefeller founded Columbia schools, the Columbia Medical Schools, University of Chicago. They took over all the education systems, all the textbook companies, and they've been controlling through the Jewish mafias, some people call it, from that time, the robber barons to this day. And now it's now run by the Gates Foundation. Still, Bill Gates is in the vaccines. He's in the Common Core. So it's still the same thing today. They use the nonprofits to shield their income, but then they use them to do the bidding to get on the boards of all these organizations. Again, a corporation or a corporation. A corporation is a corpse. It comes from the word corpse or dead.
Right.
It's a legal entity and nothing more. But then they give it legal status that it has the same rights, if not more, than humans, and it's called the right of corporate personhood. And this is why corporations get all the power, and they can take over lands and do whatever they want. Walmart can go whatever they want. But behind the scenes are the Jesuits. They control all of this education process. They control the government. They control, through their American Jesuit provincials, who runs what and how things get done.
Let me ask this question, because you had mentioned before that it's a secret military order, a secret military operation, structured that way. So some of the audience who are just hearing this for the first time, or maybe know just a little bit about it, are going to ask, okay, well, what military do they have? How do they go about enforcing their edicts, their mandates, their strategy? How do they do that?
From a contemporary point of view, just take a look at a quasi-organization like ISIS. That's nothing but mercenaries.
Yeah.
It's all run through mercenary forces. They could be embedded with traditional forces. They then commandeer other countries' forces, all the NATO forces. They're all in lockstep. You know, the Knights of Malta, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, Knights of Malta ultimately own Blackwater. We can go all the way up the line. And when you look at the Black Pope, because that's what really also part of the Jesuit order is the absolute sovereign power. It's broken into two parts: the spiritual power and the temporal power. So the all spiritual power, and then the temporal power being the brute force power. And you've seen that exercised through all the crusades that have happened. I mean, this has gone on. It never stops. I mean, when we get online and you start looking through and go down to history, you start looking just through images, and what do we see? It's just a constant bloodbath, right? It just all the way down, thousands of years. It's the same type of story that we get. So they're able to mobilize and hide behind the scenes and utilize other countries' armies, infiltrate them, create their own mercenary forces. They have just unbelievable resources at their disposal.
So they're doing it through their proxies, their mercenaries,
yes,
through their infiltration of the governments. They're basically subverting from within.
Isn't the U.S. military exactly a proxy? Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So I want to make that clear to the folks who are listening, because, like I said, they don't know much about this. And so I want to try to kind of walk them through it, because I'm sure they're going to have these types of questions. Now, let me ask this, Bruce. Maybe you can help us with this. Now, when we talk about the pyramid and who was at the top of the pyramid, now, in the beginning of the show, I had mentioned the Council 13, the Committee of 300, the CFR, the Bilderbergs, the Trilateral Commission, Freemasons, the Zionists. So when we talk about all those different groups, Where are the Jesuits? Where are they in the pecking order?
The pecking order is as follows, and understand that you have the white pope, who's the PR guy, right, front man.
Right.
Then you have the superior general in the background, who is the confessor of the white pope. So the white pope does his confessing to the black pope. Now, above the black and white pope, you have somebody called the gray pope, which is Greg Orsini.
Bruce, when you talk about confessing, just what exactly is the white pope confessing to the black pope? What's the intent of having that process? Do you know?
Yes, there actually is there actually in the Jesuit hierarchy and through all of it for the most part is a system of checks and balances where, for example, a prelate below the white Jesuit can go above the white Jesuit. It's supposed to report to the black pope.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so they go above. They can go one above, and that goes all the way up and down the line. So basically, your subordinate is supposed to report to your boss. So it's a system of checks and balances. So it's like in a certain sense, it's like reverse compartmentalization.
So in other words, somebody who is a subordinate has access to your boss. So that kind of keeps everything.
That
right?
is totally correct. Yep,
okay.
All the way up and down, and
right.
that's really what holds it together.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because that's their system of checks and balances. So nobody can get any ideas of their own. Because what the other thing about the Jesuit order is really a hive-minded organization. That's why Jamie talks about a corpse. We're a corpse. We have no mind. And when you read the blood oath, which we can get into later, it makes it very clear that you are a tool to be used.
Yeah. Okay.
There's these secret societies. And a lot of these secret societies you've never heard of, but the Freemasons are under control of their world monarchy, the all-seeing eye. And if you look at the true pyramid, what you're asking about, below them is the Crown Council of 13. Below them is the Committee of 300, which is the world's richest and most powerful families. Below them, you got the think tanks, the Pilgrim Society, the Trilateral Commission, Council of Foreign Relations, United Nations, Bilderberg Group, Club of Rome. And then below that, you got the finances, all of the banking system. The Federal Reserve is a private, for-profit company, made $77 billion in 2012, but they're under the Bank of International Settlements, the BIIS, where all banks clear their trades. So when you hear about the Brexit going on and all this crap, excuse my French, for theater, it doesn't matter what's happening because all the banks clear through the Bank of International Settlements, which is located in which country? Switzerland. Why Switzerland? Switzerland's never been invaded. It's the House of Rothschild. It has the Red Cross as the flag. It provides the banking for the treasury for the guards for the Vatican, and it's never been invaded in World War I and World War II. And then below that, you have all the corporations, and then I haven't even mentioned government yet. Below that, you have the governments and the religions and all the media and the schools, the intelligence community, military, police, courts, and prisons. And then you have us little people, the population and workers. So you can see how the numbers just get bigger and bigger as you build it out in the pyramid. But at the very top are these families, the Crown Council of 13, that have been in power, the papal bloodlines, the Farnese that were commissioned way back in the days of Loyola, and the Borgio crime family that created the Jesuits in the beginning. It goes all the way back, and these are people, these families, mostly of Spanish and Italian origin, are still in control and still in power today, and they have their separate way of raising their children. And then they created the Jewish anti-Semite, and Jews are running the world and all that stuff. I used to believe, and they're basically what's called Hofjuden courts, Judens, Jews, which Bruce can get into, but we all see the Jews as maybe being the problem in the United States, where every presidential candidate goes to AIPAC and bows in front of the Jews, and everybody thinks they're owned by the Jewish. But that's just the front. That's the story they want us to see, right, Bruce?
Yep. And here's some names for you, Mike, and let's see if people recognize these names. There are bloodline families above the Grey Pope. These are people. How about you got the House of Borgia, and Borgia actually is the Borgia crime family, which goes all the way back to Alexander Borgia. And I'll get into that, and that's getting into the Spanish Inquisition, because this is really nothing but extension of the Spanish Inquisition. Yeah, the House of Borgia, House of Breakspear, House of Somaglia, House of Orsini, or what's called House of Maximus, House of Conti, the House of Chigi, House of Colonna, House of Farnese, Medici, Gaetani, Pamphili, Estance, Aldobrandini. Then you have what are called the Ptolemaic papal bloodlines, which are the top 5 families. These go all the way back to the Ptolemaic Egypt, roughly about 350 BC, which is Orsini/Maximus, Breakspear, Aldobrandini, Farnese, and Somaglia. And then you have the Zoroastrians bloodlines, which is the Matilianos, Flaminio, Vaticano, Dogali, Solare, Lateranense, Minervio, Macateo, Salustiano, Quirnale, Agonales, Pincanio, and Esquilane. Now, how many names have we heard of those? Not too many, huh?
Well, I was just going to say, most people have heard none of those names.
Yeah. And these people are, for example, the Pavlicinis. They're still not in the what are called the Ptolemaic papal bloodlines, but the Pavlicinis are. If you look at the Pavlicinis versus Queen Elizabeth, she couldn't even carry their shoes. They are so far beyond that. They are so far up the ladder that, isn't it true, Jamie, that the Queen Elizabeth, before she enters the city of London, she has to get permission?
Yes.
She has to bow down.
Yep.
And it's also interesting that the word "sir" in front of the United States senators, Bloomberg, Sir Giuliani, they all have the name "sir" in front of them. And the reason they get knighted like that is because they're doing service to the Queen, who's doing service to the Vatican. It's all part of their club, and as George Carlin says, it's a club we're not in, right?
Right.
But Bruce has this really good information on the Hofjudens. That Bruce, can you tell us why that was founded and what it's about?
Basically, Hofjuden. You can look up in Wikipedia. Look up Hofjuden, Hofjuden, or court Jews. And at some point, okay, where Jews earned the trust of the papacy, they were allowed to hold court with them, and were elevated. But that was not, that certainly wasn't common. But there were some that were elevated to be able to hold court with the papacy. So when we look at somebody like the Rothschilds, okay, they are Hofjuden. They are the Vatican bankers. Okay, Rockefellers, our real name is Rockenfelder. All right, same type. They are also the front. So just to backtrack for one sec, when you look at the Jesuit order, Alexander Borgia became Pope, and he is what is called a diabolical monster, became Pope in August of 1492. Interesting year, correct? 1492?
Yeah.
All right. His grandson carried on and also financed the founding of Ignatius Loyola, actually in 1534. But all this really stems from the Spanish Inquisition.
Let me ask this, because I'm still kind of digging into one aspect of this, and I'm not sure that we've really answered the question, and I'm doing it for the audience and for myself, quite honestly. Now, when we talked about all the names that you gave us, Bruce, these families, are they Jesuits, or did those families create the Jesuits? In other words, I'm trying to figure out which came first, or are they one and the same?
They're working as one and the same. Certainly the 5 Ptolemaic bloodline families, that's Farnese, Somaglia, Breakspear, Orsini, Aldobrandini, well, they go all the way back to Egypt. So, however, they have certainly stayed out of the limelight, that's for sure. So they do have that. Remember I said the checks and balances in the Jesuit order where the subordinate can go to the superior and skip over one?
Yeah.
They are still involved when the superior general is going to make a decision or they're going to do something. It is then brought to from what I understand, to the papal bloodlines, the top 5 families, and through the 13 what are called Zoroastrian bloodlines, and then they shoot it back down to the superior general, or the great and then that's adjudicated through the great pope.
Okay, so essentially, if I understand this correctly, they're connected at the hip, right? So
absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I was trying to understand if the Jesuits were subservient to a particular group. In other words, they're taking orders. They're very high up the pyramid, but there's somebody above them. They're working together.
They are working together. And as you know, with some of your previous guests, studying some of the works of Anatoly Fomenko about the Jesuits and maybe some time dilation where history has been, they're masters of rewriting history. Obviously, George Orwell said,
Yes.
"You controls the past, controls the present." That do we really know for sure? No. How do we really know? They're so steeped in secrecy and intrigue. We really don't know. This is through a lot of combing through a lot of stuff and looking for similarities, looking for commonalities, trying to triangulate things. But that seems to be the pecking order as far as I know.
Well, and the point I want to get across to the audience, and the reason why I'm really dogging this, is the audience needs to understand the importance of the Jesuits. It's not just a word, a name. It's not just, 4 or 5 people. It's not some fringe organization or entity that's out there that every once in a while pages in, pages out. I'm trying to drive the point home that this is something that we really have to pay attention to.
Yes, and the Jesuits in their most despotic form is a fascist it's a fascist. They want a fascist one world government where there's 0.5% controlling all the peasants and no middle class. Period. And isn't that exactly what Protestantism was against?
Yeah.
And that's why the Protestant Reformation was such a big deal. And as Jamie alluded to prior, that they were not going to bow down to Catholic Rome, and that was not going to happen. So they had to bring it. They needed to bring in the Jesuits to quell, and that was called the Counter-Reformation.
Yeah, and you know what? You can see it today, right? You can see the destruction of the middle class. You can see that there's going to be an elite class, and then there's going to be the serfs.
Well, let's bring it all the way forward now. That is exactly what Obamacare is meant to do.
Yeah, that's right.
Disembowel the middle class. And it was Protestantism that talked about the absolute importance of a middle class, that anybody can become something, that you don't have to be in a feudal serf relationship, because that's exactly what the New World Order is. It's actually going back to the way it was, going back, back to Babylon.
The Vatican is not, it's a solar cult. They have their religion on a sun day. If you look at all their symbolism, they're all solar culted symbolisms. They were ruled by the Luciferian principle, the light bearer. And so they've got us believing that Sunday is their religious day for Jesus, when in fact that's the Saturday, the Sabbath.
Right.
So They've changed it all up, but since nobody questions anything anymore, I mean, we have no anti-war protest movement anymore in this country. The protest that the Protestant name comes from, the Protestants aren't protesting anymore. They haven't risen up. But this might be a good time to really lay into the real meat behind their creation. They create the feminine divine. They create the Isis in order to destroy her. They have to have the male dominant principle destroy the female principle, because the male is the seed and the female is the receptive. And since I'm the seed, I'm the creator of life, I must destroy you. So they play these games over long periods of time. World War I, Stalin was a Jesuit. He was handled by a Jesuit. Lenin, when he came over with Trotsky, he was trained in the Bronx. He ran a Jesuit newspaper in the Bronx. They put him in sealed trains and ran over to Russia with $5 million of gold, and that's when they started World War I. So that was a communist introduction and a test. World War II, Himmler was a black pope. He assassinated the other black pope. They didn't have a black pope for a while, but he took over power. He was the one that worked with Rome. They foist these wars, and then they play both sides of it. And if you go back in time, they fomented the first 30 Years' War in Central Europe in 1618 to 1648. They killed over 150,000 Irish Protestants in 1641 to 1649. 1685, they killed over 500,000 French Protestant Huguenots. They were behind the French Revolution. In Croatia during World War
with Napoleon as their hammer, right?
Right, and when he turned on them is when they exiled him. And in Croatia, the Croatian War, the Catholic state, over 700,000 men and women and children perished. And Mike, I think I was listening into one of your shows where you read that the fourth vow of the Jesuits.
That was Kara St. Louis, yeah.
So this is just part of their oath they take in what's called the fourth vow. And just like the Freemasons, where the first three degrees are very humanitarian and help all and really do well, if you look at the oath of the Freemasons, it dovetails perfectly with many of the other oaths that are taken in these secret societies, but they all come from this one oath of the Jesuits. And the part of it goes like this, quote, I furthermore promise and declare that I will, when opportunity present, make and wage relentless war, secret or openly, against all heretics, Protestants, and liberals, as I am directed to do so, to exterminate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, or condition, and that I will hang, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up their stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls, in order to annihilate forever their execrable race, that when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisoned cup, the strangulating cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honor of rank, dignity, or authority of the person or persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do so by the agent of the Pope or superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Faith of the Society of Jesus, in confirmation of which I hereby dedicate my life, soul, and all corporal powers, and with the dagger which I now receive, I will subscribe my name written in my blood in testimony thereof, and should I prove false or weaken in my determination, may my brethren and fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope cut off my hands and feet and my throat, and cut my throat from ear to ear, my belly opened and sulfur burned therein, and with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on earth, and my soul shall be tortured by demons in eternal hell forever.
Pleasant.
Lovely, right?
It's great.
That they dedicate their life to the Pope, and they become agents, and they will do whatever the Pope tells them to do without question. That's their blood oath.
Yeah, it's funny. I was in a show recently with Sophia Smallstorm, and we were talking about why evil seems to prevail. And I had said to her, I was asked this question several years ago, and I had said that the reason why good has a problem or difficulty overcoming evil is because evil knows no boundaries, whereas good and love has boundaries. There's a certain point where good people, they won't go there. Evil will go there plus some. And, what you just read there, Jamie, is a perfect example of what's going on. It's the mindset, and by the way, in Freemasonry, I think they call their oaths obligations. Right, which means they're obligated to do these things. So it's very difficult for people to get their heads wrapped around that people actually operate this way, think this way, believe this way. This is why we have one heck of a problem ahead of us to turn the ship around, because many, many people will just listen to what you just read and they'll go, nah.
Well, and I don't give them a hall pass on this, Mike, because the information now in the information age, if you read about the Vatican and child pedophilia, you read about all the pedophilia going on. Dennis Hassert just got child pedophilia charges. That's how they rule. They get all of the officials in they get them subjected to these compromising positions. Look at Bill Clinton before he got into office.
Right.
So they hold videotapes. They hold, and it's very elaborate how they bring them into the system, and they do the next thing and the next thing, and just make them so committed that for them to step out of line, they can take them out of office just like they did General Petraeus. So the information's out there. It's all over the news if you choose to see. Right. But what I'm seeing in my friends and family and people I care about, they're choosing not to see. They're choosing not to believe that people can be this evil. And getting to your point, you make an excellent, excellent point. We have to play by cosmic rules if we want to ascend to higher consciousness and our true nature, as I believe we're co-creators with God. And if we do that, we can't be lying. We can't be stealing. We can't be killing. We can't be doing all these things. They can do whatever they want. They have no rules. The more they can inflict terror, the more they can inflict harm, the more they can do blood sacrifice rituals, the more power they get from the energy that is created by all of us in fear. They create all these fear, false flag events, And if you're on fear all the time, you're back on your heels.
Right.
Well, if you're back on your heels, how easy it for you is to take your finger and just knock them off. And so that's why they're creating all these false flags events for the big takeover. And the big takeover, World War I was about, the first thing I talked about was communism, and Nazi Germany was country communism. This was an experiment that they did. And getting back to Washington, D.C., it was called the new birthing of Jerusalem, the new creation of America. And can you name the two states on each side of Washington, D.C.? There's two states on each side of their new Jerusalem they created is the Virgin Mary, Virginia and Maryland. This is all a big experiment to these guys. They have in the Vatican hanging the Kennedy assassination with Kennedy lumped over in his car. They have that hanging in the Vatican. They know no bounds. They know no rules. And for us to play by the rules, it's a lot harder for us because we have to do the right thing. We have to live up to the standards we want to create for the better world we wish to see for our children.
Right.
It's a great battle, and I believe we were brought here to fight this battle right now. But boy, it's sure daunting to go understand the forces we're up against and these kind of pledges they take for, just doing the show. One of us could be outed for that. It's just that's the way they work. But it's got to get out, and if it's not going to be me, who's it going to be? So I'm just honored to be able to share this information with people. Being enlightened isn't seeking light; it's shining light into the darkness. And I feel so much more empowered, alive now that I've discovered these hidden truths. Where others feel it's disempowering, they become numb, and they just simply don't want. Their lives are too busy, or who are you to be telling me this? And they always attack you. They do the ad hominem attacks instead of just going on my website. Just read the article for yourself. I'm just trying to share. I'm just trying to bring you this information that I spend 8 hours a day and reading thousands of books to get learned on. And I'm just trying to share it with you guys because I love you. And to get back from them all this grief and accusations and attacks, it's just part of the game. It's just what we have to do. And I'm glad you guys are doing it because, if not us, who's going to do it, right?
Well, what they don't realize is they're enabling. They don't think they are. That's the funny thing, right? There's this really weird dynamic that takes place. They don't think they're enabling what's going on in the world, all the evil and all the dysfunction. But by doing what our family members and our friends are doing, which essentially is, look, go away. I don't want to know about this. They're helping to put the agenda in place. I was having lunch about a week ago with two friends, and one of the guys is a geoengineering activist here in North Carolina. Good guy. And, we're eating lunch, and he says to me, hey, Mike, I'm doing everything I can to awaken people. And it doesn't seem to be making a dent. It doesn't seem to be making a difference. He was saying the same thing that we're saying, that all he gets is a bunch of grief and ridiculed by family members and friends for calling out the obvious, right, with the spraying. And he says to me, what are your thoughts on that? I said, you just keep going. That's it. Okay? We may never see the change that we want to see in our lifetimes, but we have to keep going. I said, what's the alternative? To go back to make-believe land, a fantasy world? I mean, right? The fake reality?
Yeah.
And make believe that... Yeah, exactly,
Once the box is open, how are you going to go back in the box?
Exactly.
It's like...
Well, but also that they can't unhear. And once you speak, they can't unhear what you said. And so I'm just presenting information, and I call it the echo effect. And a lot of people have this conversation when they get into the truth movement. Well, they aren't getting it, and they aren't understanding it. I don't think that's the work now. I think the work is an inward journey to see if you get it, if you understand. And so then it becomes how to put it out in the right way so that you're presenting the information, but don't worry about what comes back. Don't worry if they're getting it. Because what Bruce and I are seeing now in this truth movement, now that we're 10 years into it or so, we're seeing memes coming up. Like we started posting on the Jesuits about what, Bruce, 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago?
Yep.
We're seeing articles being picked up, other sites picking up Jesuit stories. Jesuit, not the Jews, is now becoming a theme around many of the alternative articles. And it's interesting. There's a lot of alternative news sites, like we were talking about earlier, will not talk to the Jesuits. They will not talk about. They'll talk about Jews all day, but you send them a bunch of articles about Father Jorge Lemaitre, the founder of the Big Bang Theory. Anybody want to talk about that? Which an MIT professor and also a Jesuit was on CNN the other day espousing the the wonderfulness of a Jesuit priest that created the Big Bang Theory. Again, people don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that 30 craters on the moon were named after Jesuits. They don't want to hear this ballad I just read that's so disgusting. We're in this, what I call run to numb. And so by numbing with the bread and circuses, by putting on the football game or getting on your device and tapping, it's escapism, and that's exactly what they want. Yeah. They don't want us to get empowered by being our total self of a higher consciousness beings that could wipe them out in a second if we ever got together and organized. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of us shining light like this. So it's just about putting it out there in the right way and speaking and not holding our loved ones accountable for getting it or not getting it, because it's happening. I'm encouraged. I'm not hopeful. I'm encouraged that change is coming, but it won't be in my lifetime. We're just starting to turn the wheel of the Titanic away from the iceberg. We're the ones that just first grabbed the steering wheel and went, holy crap. And so we have to honor that we're just breaking the wind now, and it's the toughest work you can possibly have. But it's also, I think, the most spiritual work. And that's why I say it has to resonate with you inside, not so much with how others react and respond to what you're presenting to them.
It's funny. It reminds me of the book title. I interviewed James Perloff, I guess about 2 years ago, but Truth is a Lonely Warrior.
Yep.
How true is that?
Well, and you look at all the great people, not to compare any of us with some of these great people like Da Vinci and whatnot, but they died lonely paupers. They were misunderstood. They were ridiculed. They didn't get discovered till much later. So our legacy may turn out to be, well, we brought this information, others picked up on it, started a movement, whatever. But it's not for the headlines. It's not for your own ego. This is real work of really hard work. I went through illness. Bruce has gone through illness. There really is what's called the dark night of the soul. There really is having to go on this spiritual journey of the Kubler-Ross of first you're in denial, then you're in pleading and begging that the world isn't going to change to the way you're hearing about now. You want to keep it the way it is. And then you finally have to go into the dark night of the soul and really feel what it's like to understand what a great loss that we have upon us right now, what a loss it is for our children, what a loss it is for the environment that's getting destroyed from geoengineering and the crapification of food, that they won't even tell us what's in food, the whole toxicity of our world, and nobody that wants to engage. Yeah. And I just think it's that numbing factor where they just look, it's not in my backyard yet, so everything's still okay.
Right.
But we're a nation of debt. And once somebody owns your debt, you're in what they call debt servitude. And I, for one, am not going to be beholden to these guys, and I will fight to the death to be the author of my own authority, and I will be my own person. And I think that's where it comes down to. You have to draw a line, and you have to decide that, this is where I stand, and you're not going to own my ass.
Because, Mike, like Jamie says, it happens to the other guy. It never happened. Of course, the other guy says it happens to the other guy, which makes you what? The other guy.
Right.
Until you're personally affected by it. I was just helping my sister. She's been ill. It's just up in the Boston area this past weekend. I have a brother-in-law, and a year and a half ago, all he cared about was Washington Redskins and his job, and that was it. And he'd just sit there in front of the television and just soak it right into the optic nerve. I go up and see him this weekend, and it was like an epiphany. And he's like, Bruce, he goes, all the things you've been telling your sister, he goes, I cannot believe it. He goes, I can never go back. He goes, you don't know what you've done to me. I said, I don't know. Did I let you go? Did I get you out of Tartarus? Get you out of the... But I'm looking at a quote. I'm looking at a Jesuit maxim right now, just to get back to one thing that you guys had alluded to, and I wanted to just pipe in it back because this just drives me. Makes me ill. Is the pedophilia aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And here's a Jesuit maxim: give me the child for the first 7 years, and I'll give you the man.
Yeah.
Jesuit maxim. And then I had an article talking about, it's called "In the House of the Strong Man, Sodomy is the Key," starting at 3 years old. And this is what these people do. And they control people and traumatize them and create mind control slaves using very perverse pedophilia as one aspect of it, and to gain control over these people. And then at that age, what kind of discernment do you have? You then become a slave to it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this question. alternative research community, the truth movement, right? We talked about this before we got started with the show earlier this afternoon. And you guys had a very good point where a lot of information is being leaked out. Even the pedophilia, Bruce, when you think about it, right? Especially coming out of Europe, coming out of the UK. And there's many other things that are just kind of coming out now. Now, a lot of people believe that these things are coming out because the truth is coming out. Others will say that nothing comes out unless these guys put it out. So what is your opinion on where we're at with that type of scenario? Is it coming out because you can't hold the truth back, or is it coming out because they're allowing it to come out, and by allowing it to come out allows them to further manipulate and to adjust their game?
Well, I guess we should do a little Gallup poll here, a mini Gallup poll here. I would say that anything that gets out into the domain is because they put it out there.
Yeah, they create the memes like the new transgender. That's the new meme that we all talk about. It's fascinating to watch how control they are of all of our lives with the news. We all get the news from one feed, basically. So they can control. They've owned the press for a very long time, since Luce, the Knights of Malta guy, owned Time Magazine and Life Magazine, Look Magazine. There used to be 3 radio TV stations, ABC, CBS, and NBC. But they're still owned now. There's thousands of them, but they're still owned by the same players. Nothing gets out unless they want them to. They have the power to shut down internets. They have the power to cancel sites. They have the power to change the narrative. But I do see from some of the information we're doing, they are responding to us. I'm sure you found in your website, you get the shills and the trolls and the disinfo agents. And they're very easy to spot because they never deal with the information presented. They always either attack you or present alternative information. Okay. So we're having an impact. The internet is really great for bringing the information. I'm seeing a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds coming online, and they haven't drank the Kool-Aid like we did growing up. And they're more open to hearing this information. They're more open to investigating. They're not surprised that this stuff is true. And that's kind of where I'm focusing my energies and trying to write and provide for. But everything we see on TV, everything we see in the news, it's all choreographed. It's all decided well ahead of time. They'll bring this meme in. They'll bring that meme in. Everybody will talk about it. I was on a lake last week on my boat and with some friends, and there was just the lake was just so crowded. And then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there was no boats on the lake. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? Well, it was the 7th game of the NBA, and Golden State was playing. Everybody went home to get in front of their TVs from playing outside on the lake. That's the kind of power in just a microcosm of the macrocosm these people have around the world. And since we're one world now and all the information goes around the world, it's much easier for them to control the world meme. So now this week Putin is the bad guy, and next week ISIS is the bad guy, and then after that we'll bring in this and that. It's all by design. Bruce had a really good thing on his website with the alleged Pulse shootings, and it shows a video from 4 years ago that included the Pulse nightclub in the video called My Pet Goat. Wow. You just can't make this stuff up,
Why would they do that? For what purpose? So why, we look at this, like a lot of these false flags, and the Pulse would be a very good example, and looks really sloppy. You see people, you see law enforcement guys smiling. You see them carrying wounded back to the Pulse instead of away from the Pulse. I have to say that, either these people are so incompetent and sloppy and can't follow a script or a playbook, or it's intentional. And I look at it as intentional because then we're all talking about it, and then we're arguing about it. Then we're going to go to all the people that are not in the know, and we're going to say, hey, look what happened over here. Look at this Pulse night, and and they're going to get slapped down.
You're absolutely right, Bruce. I mean, just take this one example. We're digressing here a little bit, but you're on a very good point. There was an article, I guess, or a video that came out maybe 2 days ago. It was Andrew Napolitano, right? Judge Andrew Napolitano, and he had said that nobody had died inside the Pulse until 5:15 when the SWAT team came in. Right. Okay? That clearly contradicted the story that was put out there before he made that statement on television. And so then what happened was the entire alternative research, conspiracy research world just converged on that, and that became the topic du jour. That became what everybody was talking about, trying to surmise and understand what was going on, why he said what he said. This invalidates the story that was given by the police before he made that statement, and so on. And so now what happens is everybody is distracted and everybody is spinning.
Heads on a swivel, and everybody's taking sides, and it's like a gristmill coming to a complete halt, like the 9/11 truth movement, and it just comes to a dead end.
Right.
And then what are we left with? What are we left with? We're just left with acrimony.
Let's set that up, too, because if you think about the few months before and the year before, what did we just see a few weeks ago? We saw them come out and say, well, all the public education schools must have transgender bathrooms now, right?
Right.
And then before that, we've got the greatest athlete decathlon named Bruce Jenner becoming Caitlyn Jenner. And all of a sudden, he's going to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, or she, excuse me, or whatever, is going to be wrapped around a flag naked on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And now we have the LBGT pulse shooting, where all we know, you, me, and everybody else, gets it from a feed on an electronic screen controlled by the powers that be.
Right.
There's a lot of things going all the way back to NASA where it's just been theater. It's a TV show made in a green room. And we all drink the Kool-Aid and say it's true because we saw it, and we never can investigate it. We can never go and talk to the people that were actually there around the nightclub. And so all of this, we can be worked any which way they want us to, because we see something on the internet or we see something in the corporate controlled newspapers, and then we take that as headline truth instead of reading books about it. And then the truth comes out, like after 9/11, a few years later. Well, turns out there was a bunch of drills going on at the exact same time. Why did the greatest force of military with an hour and a half notice in the Pentagon with 32 anti-aircraft missiles surrounding it, why didn't they defend themselves? Well, the planes were sent out to sea, and there's no video. Oh, we have one little 5-frame video. I mean, it's just, when you start looking back on it, it doesn't make any sense, but the meme has already been set. The headlines are already in people's minds. So then you have to go back and destroy the official story, and it's just, people just don't want to go there. They just don't want to hear it.
Well, and even within the alternative research community, there's bickering, right? I mean, they can't agree on 9/11. They can't agree on Sandy Hook. They can't agree. I mean, you have factions that agree with each other, but then you have these standoffs, and there's debating, and there's arguing, and stone throwing, and right. I mean, even within the folks that are supposedly trying to bring the truth out, they're beating each other up.
Again, it's the oldest trick in the book. It's divide and conquer, and then it comes to a complete standstill, and we look down in our hands, and we say, what do we got? I got nothing. What do you got? Well, I got nothing, because we've just faced off against each other, and we've just annihilated. You know who's destroying the truth? In actuality, we end up destroying it amongst ourselves.
That's right.
And that's the Jesuits. They don't have to do it. They set it up. We do it. They spin us like a top. We're like dueling tops. And that's where you see.
And it just got to add to that. I mean, what I get back to in the Wall Street is when I would go to the companies or research analysts and whatnot. One of the points they kept on bringing is you never hear about marketing to companies. When I was in business marketing in school, I asked the professor in my senior year, he says, let me get this straight. Marketing is basically mind control. And he said, you got it. Well, just think about, they have a thing called brain mapping. Obama just authorized $6.5 billion for brain mapping. And they've been doing brain mapping, not just every year, but every decade, spending billions and billions of dollars studying between our ears and behind our eyes. Well, what do you think these guys learned over decades and centuries about how man behaves? They know more about us than we do about ourselves, and that's how they win. So again, it's an internal journey to be able to know thyself to be true. But in the world of disinformation, in the world of muddied waters, it becomes really hard. And so you start developing, and Mike, I'm sure you're really good at this too, your own intuition for bullshit. You start to get your BS detector really finely tuned, and you can tell right away whether that makes sense or not. You don't even have to go even further. You can tell by the way it's framed. So I think that's the work of higher consciousness now, is just we do our own work. We bring the truth out the best we can. We give people that are on the fringe or at the shore looking out and wanting to know more some fodder and some feed for their thought that they can determine for themselves. And over time, since we will be proven out or it'll be too late, but it's time to get the word out.
How much danger, Jamie or Bruce, do you think that people who are doing work like you guys are doing, I'm doing work with these shows, that are, pushing this stuff out there? So is there an imminent downside, or are they just simply not concerned?
Well, let's put it this way. I couldn't put a number of years on it, but in terms of, we talked initially about times, spans of time. A year to us, they are the master of. They're basically like actuaries. When you look at life insurance, for example, actuarial tables or morbidity tables, and they have to plan into the next century, and they look at 100-year spans. I look at this as like a race to, right now it's just a race to the bottom now. I mean, their plans are in full swing. We're at the very end of what their plan is. So I don't think we're much of a threat to them because they've got so many things going. But it's certainly, I think it's incumbent upon us, Jamie says, I feel spiritually compelled to put this information out there regardless of the circumstances, and so be it, because I know that I'm on the right side here. And by the way, most of the things that we talk about, quite frankly, are, yes, we deviate, but most of the stuff that we gird our conversations around are actually quotes that have already been spoken by others.
Yeah.
So it's really not anything new under the sun. But I think I bring it out. The subject matter at this point in time is new under the sun. And Jamie, what do you think about that?
It's so deep, it's so vast, and we're just at the beginnings of this full disclosure of much hidden truth, that it's just about getting it out there. And if my whole reason for living right now, I'm 59 and a half years old. I've got a 10 and a half year old son, and my only goal right now is for him to know that I tried, for him and all the children to know that when stuff hit the fan and the news came out about what was going to happen, that I spoke out, that I was there on the front lines trying to bring conscious awareness to others. And whether I succeeded or failed is not what is important. It's that I gave it the best effort I could in the best way I could, because the children in the future, when we see what they have planned for them, they don't have full lives ahead of them. All children. They have the Georgia Guidestones. I don't know if, Mike, you've ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I actually got on a plane and flew there back in 2007 because I just couldn't believe that was true. And so I went there and I looked, and it's 2.5 hours northeast of Atlanta, Georgia. The Georgia Guidestones were put in by a guy named R.C. Christian, who represented a group of unnamed people. And they put in 4 20-foot, 4 to 5 ton monuments of the finest granite in the United States on the same geographic ley lines as pyramids in Giza and Stonehenge and down in Chichen Itza pyramids. So it's a very big earth energy center. And these 10 commandments, as they're called, the Georgia Guidestones or America Guidestones, the first one says, keep the population at 500 million people. That's etched in stone in 8 different languages around the entire Georgia Guidestones. The 10th commandment says, don't be a cancer on this earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. This cost tens of millions of dollars back in 1991 to erect. Someone had very, very serious intentions. And on top of this, they put a big cornerstone that was much thicker, and they wrote it in ancient Hebrew, cuneiform, Sanskrit, and hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
And which took a long time to research, but it said, let this be the age of reason. And if you read the Freemasons and whatnot, they're big on reason and stuff. So the connection can be made that there is a play going on to eradicate 4% of the population. And there's a document that you probably heard of called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, using food substitutes, using vaccines, using all these different ways to basically, have a mass die-off without any implications, and be able to plausibly deny that they had created it.
Yeah, the slow kill. Yeah,
slow kill and keep the infrastructure in place. Yep.
Yeah, and that's what they do in the movies. Iraq. Yeah, we invaded Iraq under false pretenses of weapons of mass destruction. Well, where's the outrage that I feel in my soul right now for 2 million Iraqis? I apologize from my country to your country, people, for the death of these people and then putting depleted uranium, which is going to be deadly for the next, 50,000 years?
Yeah.
I mean, we have done horrendous things around the world to people that we haven't been accountable for. So it's time to start owning up to the real America, the real military operation that run for these other countries or other world powers, that we're the military arm. The City of London is the banking arm, and the Vatican is the religious arm. That's part of their trilateral operation. But we can take our role and we can do what we can with what we have. And that's all you can do right now. And you have to be satisfied with it because it's not going to change tomorrow.
Yeah, the reason why I asked the question, too, is because a lot of folks, they know in their hearts that they should do something, they should say something, but they're afraid. They're afraid
Right.
that, something's going to happen to them. In fact, I've been asked this question many times. People will say to me, Mike, aren't you a little concerned or afraid about doing these radio shows and talking about the topics that you're talking about with your guests? And I tell them the same thing that you just said, Jamie, what you said perfectly. Look, I have to do something. I don't want to be here having my daughter look at me and say, Dad, what the hell were you doing? She's got her part too. Our kids are going to have their part too. But, you have to, as a parent, as an adult, you have to lead by example. If you're going to sit there in front of the television set, suck down buds and potato chips and watch ball games, and that's going to be it.
What are you doing?
Exactly. What are you doing? And then 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years, I tell folks, I think it's only a matter of about 20 years. In 20 years, this country, current course and speed, will be destitute. There's no pensions. There's no retirement. There's nothing.
Well, you're a finance guy. I mean, what's 20 trillion? They make the numbers so big to us that we can't even comprehend. We don't know what $1 trillion is, much less 20 trillion.
Right.
But they keep accounting of it. And as long as we are in debt servitude, we can never be free. There used to be a thing called a debt jubilee. I think it was a law passed where you could have debt. It could only last for 45 or 50 years, and then all debts were cleared. There's so many changes we can do, but right now the movement is to educate, alert, and inform. I've taken that word fear, which everybody brings up, and they ask me the same question. Well, aren't you afraid? Yeah, but I'm doing it anyway. And if they, I tell people my goal, if I get really good at this truth movement, is to get a bullet in the head, like Martin Luther King, like Gandhi. I mean, all these guys that were big truthers that last well into past their lifetimes, they all got knocked off for telling the truth. And sadly, that's kind of like our goal right now, is to really stand up and be accountable and be responsible. And the word responsible means the ability to respond. Hope comes from action. It does not come from wanting somebody else to do it for you. My mother said, well, Jamie, why are you doing this? Why are you putting your life at risk? Why are you putting your son's life at risk, is what she said to me. And I said, I'm doing it because I can't ask anyone else to do it.
Yeah.
It has to come from me. It can't come from somebody else. Everybody has to make that decision. But if you choose to look away, you're a coward. I'm sorry. You have no courage in your soul. You're going to go wherever you're going to go. But those of us that step up to the plate, I believe we're only using 10 to 15% of our brain, higher consciousness power. We'll come back the next time at a better place because we did this work. This is the work that's the most important work on earth right now. And the three of us and all the other truth seekers and people speaking out, I just take my hat off to you guys. I respect you just immensely. But the rest of you that have this information, that are turning your backs while children are being killed for ritual sacrifices for these pedophiliacs, and I'm not even sure they're human. I have no sympathy for these people when they start complaining that, oh, well, my life isn't good because now I lost my house or lost this. It's a much bigger picture than you, folks. This is a much bigger deal. We're talking about these powers that want to wipe us off the face of the earth. We're in this war that is an undeclared war where they've said what they want to do, and the sheep will just keep sleeping. So I came up with this word fear, and I said pick your fear. So which fear do you guys pick? So you can either flee everything and run, face everything and respond, facts, evidence, academia, and research, false evidence or appearing real. So you can pick your fear. So you don't have to take that word fear. You can choose to act. It can become a positive word, fear. And that's the jujitsu, is taking their energy, flipping it around and becoming empowered by it. I mean, that's the game I play.
Well, another way to look at it too, Jamie, is this is coming, and they're going to force this, and it's coming to your doorstep, whether you like it or not. Right, Mike?
That's right.
And right now, at this very moment, we still do have a choice. We have a choice to stand up and do, each one of us, whatever that is, especially just turning your mental attention, if that's the least you can do and add to the collective consciousness, turn your mental attention towards this and become aware and become acquainted with it, and that will spread. It doesn't take very much. It doesn't take very many people either, as we've learned it from history in the past. It doesn't take much to spin the wheel.
You know, let me ask this question here. This is something that I think perplexes a lot of people, because we talk about these secret societies. We're talking about the Jesuits. We talk about the Freemasons. Just name the secret society. When this country was founded, it seemed like it was all set up to be a pretty good deal. I mean, at least that's what a lot of people believe on the surface, that, you know, when the United States was formed, that it was going to be consist of freedom and liberty and sovereignty and so on. What happened? I mean, were the founders really good guys, or were we duped? Were they part of the ultimate scheme that we're seeing unfold today, manifesting today? What's the deal? Do you have any thoughts on that?
We had one Jesuit was one of the 56 signers of the Constitution, which everybody loves to cite as our freedom and the new grand experiment of freedom for the individual without rulership of king or church. Well, give me a break. We the people meant the 56 guys that signed the contract. That was a contract. When they signed it, you didn't free the slaves. You didn't allow women to vote. You didn't not take the Native American property away from them. It was 7% of the population. It was the richest guys in the United States making their own rules about how we, the people that signed this document, want to go forward. And so they sold it. If you take the new $100 bill, this is really interesting. It was ready to come out in 2009, and it released in 2013 of October. Half of the new $100 bill is in gold. Okay, we're $20 trillion in debt. They come out with a new $100 bill where half of it is in gold. Well, if you look at that document that everybody carries around in their pocket, it's in the background is written the second paragraph, not the first, of the Declaration of Independence that says we in political bands no longer bind us and we can form a new government. 9/11 is, maybe you guys have seen it or not, but 9/11 is on the back of the 5, 10, 20, and $50 bills.
Yeah.
These guys, they own everything. They write the documents, then they tell you a story, and then we all believe that we have this freedom of power. But try walking across a border and see how far you go. Try not having Obamacare, worst health care of 40 countries we have, highest cost, and everybody's got to have it now. That's socialism. I mean, they're not providing better health care. They're not doing it. The doctors are there to make profits. They're not there to heal. They should be trying to make people not get sick, not treat them after they get sick. A dentist should be trying to treat you prevent you from getting cavities, not treating the cavities, but that's the only way they make money. So the whole system is set up as a deception, in my view. This country was set up as a grand experiment by the Jesuits to destroy us, to destroy freedoms. And they're going to come down really hard on the United States to be an example for the rest of the world. Never, ever question their authority. Dick Cheney had the famous line, make sure you stomp out all the grass that grows through the concrete, or sooner you're going to have to mow more lawns. That's the way they think. They're in power. I've seen Wall Street where this money is no object. They have no empathy for humans. It's just their club.
I agree with Jamie, and it is. You took the words out of my mouth, Jamie. It's a grand experiment, and we were built to be the hammer to bring in the new world order, and everybody else is a nail. And we've been at war 93.7% since the founders founded this country. 93.7% since the creation of the United States, we've been in wartime.
Yeah, it's perpetual
no country.
War. Yeah.
Yes, and in the last 30 years, we've estimated to have killed, I think, 23 million people, and that probably is low. And we are oblivious to it. What do we do to the Native Americans?
We killed them all, and whoever was
A lot
left
of
put them on a postage stamp somewhere and called it a reservation.
Right. Well, a lot of
What,
those were Jesuit mercenaries coming in, cleaning it out. There you go. That was
what we do the
nothing changes.
Japanese in World War II in this country? We put them in internment camps. But the symbolism is where I get a lot of this information from. The word fasces, which they say came from Mussolini. Fasces, F-A-S-C-E-S, is a bundle of rods containing an axe with a blade projecting. This goes back to the Roman consuls back in the Caesar days, where they took the bundling caning rods with the axeman's axe sticking out of it, and when they made new laws, they walked around Rome and Italy, and whoever made the laws on it said, "Do you have any problem with our new laws?" Well, if you look on the back of the dime, you'll see that what they call lycor rods, the bundling rods, the fascie rods, on the back of the dime. You'll see this on Lincoln Memorial on the chair he's sitting on. You will see this in the Congressional House where the president gives his State of the Union speech. You will see fasces, these bundling rods of torture and control on each side of the dais that the president gives his State of the Union speech. It's right in front of us that they are telling us that we have the symbol of power over life and limb, and the stick symbolized punishment by whipping, and the axe head is by execution by beheading. It's so in our face that we just can't even see it sometimes.
Have you ever seen the movie Hidden in Plain Sight, the documentary?
That's excellent, isn't it?
It's excellent, yeah.
Yeah, the guy just basically took Google Earth and he connected all the sites around the world, and he showed how Washington, D.C. was set up as a pentagram.
Right.
I live out near San Francisco. It was amazing how to see San Francisco with Angel Island, Treasure Island, and then the ever-present phallic penis called the obelisk, which is the Transamerica building, which just happens to be 555 feet, the same size as the obelisk in Washington, D.C., 666 feet.
Right.
Same one they have that they took from Rome that they have in the city of London, the same one they have in the Vatican. And then they put the female Vesica Pisces around it to symbolize the male penetrating the female, just like they had Apollo, the sun god, go to Isis, the moon Apollo, allegedly. And that's the male sun god going to impregnate the Isis. It's all right in front of us, but it's for those with eyes to see and ears to hear. But that movie, Hidden in Plain Sight, showed really to me how many centuries that they have been laying out and mapping our world. It's fascinating from a research perspective, and it's really discomforting when you understand that this whole country and most countries were set up under their rule.
And when we say they, Jamie, we're referring to the Jesuits, correct?
And the families that run them.
And the families that run them.
And the papacy in general.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to tie it back so that when we talk about they, the folks don't resort back to, the confused state of, I don't really know who those people are.
Remember, the Jesuits were suppressed after the Counter-Reformation because they were considered too evil and they had too much power, and they were suppressed, and they went underground temporarily and then came back out again. They were officially reinstated in 1812. Mm-hmm. And they're never leaving.
They never left.
They never left, and that's where the Illuminati was created, as just a cover to keep doing what they're doing, and that's where people get mixed up about the Illuminati. Don't really understand that, but that's just Jesuits.
Okay,
it's another front.
Right, and Andrew Weishaupt came to the United States in 1776, which you see the Roman numerals on the back of the Masonic dollar bill that was brought by Freemason Franklin Delano Roosevelt. There was, I think, 8 Freemasons that signed the Constitution. And Mike, have you ever heard of the Entity?
No.
The Entity is an intelligence operation out of the Vatican that controls the CIA, M16, the Mossad, the Russian intelligence services. And so you ask, well, how is this all coordinated? How can they do this all? Well, the Entity, there's a book by Eric Frattini called The Entity, 5 Centuries of Vatican Espionage that everyone should read. And this is how they gather all their information. This is why they use the seeing eye. And it's called the St. Leopold Foundation is the great Jesuit spy system. And so we think that the CIA is running the show. No, they answer to the Entity. The Vatican and the whole operation of the Society of Jesus, they call themselves the establishment. So they have these big overarching names, but underneath them is all the Freemasons, all the Opus Dei, the P2, Pilgrim Society, and then some of these secret societies we hear about, and then these alleged think tanks like the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, Council of Foreign Relations. Those are the names we see. But again, there's this pyramid like 7, 8, 10 rungs behind these that we hear about and a lot of people are starting to learn about. So it's just constant digging to learn more. But the entity is the Intelligence Operation Gathering Service that puts out to all the other intelligence agencies around the world. And I tell people it's a one world government already. There's not a new world order being created. It's an old world order with their agenda, calling it the New World Order. But if you look at the powers that be, they have the World Health Organization, the Bank of International Settlements. All of these are world organizations. NAFTA just got TPP.
United Nations.
NAFTA. All of these are trade agreements of world law. This is and the reason I know that we're under a one world government is very, very simple. Your debt follows you wherever you go in the world. So that right there shows you that we have a world banking system, a world debt system for collection. So it's hard for people to think that the United States is not a country, but it's very simple when you look at the colors of our flag, the same as Britain, the same Russia, Soviet Union goes down and they come up with their new flag. What's their color? Red, white, and blue. What's the color of the French flag? Red, white, and blue. What's the color of the British flag? Red, white, and blue. Chile, Puerto Rico. You go around the world and you look at all the flags or you look for red crosses. Many of these countries could have chosen any color if they were independent, but they seem to all choose the same exact colors. What a coincidence theory,
Well, let me just say this has been a fabulous discussion. We're bumping up against 2 hours, guys. And what I want to do is to reconvene us for another show in the very near future, and we can continue the discussion because this has been excellent. It really has been. I've learned a lot. You guys have really done some great research. Websites and social media and YouTube channels. Where can people find out more about your work and your research? Jamie, you want to start first?
Sure. I have 3 websites. One is called Taboo, Taboo, T-A-B-U, and that stands for Towards a Better Understanding, tabooblog.com. The second site I have is AVVI, Apple Victor Victor Ida.info, and that's a vaccine information website, just both sides of the story, just presenting information, what's in vaccines, did you know vaccines? Who created vaccines, Mike, real quick? A Jesuit.
Okay, well, that was going to be my wild guess.
Yeah, and the third website is called A Plain Truth, A-P-L-A-N-E, truth.info, and then I have a YouTube site, a plaintruth.info website that I'd love for everybody to come visit and share information and pass it on if you find it relevant. And I really appreciate you, Mike, having us on your show.
Oh, absolutely. And all your websites are great. I've been to them all, and I love your YouTube channel. Love it.
Thank you.
So I've been subscribed for a long time. Bruce, how about yourself?
The Modern Gnostic. So it's modern, Gnostic, moderngnostic.com. I have another website called the Geocentric Gnostic.com. And the Modern Gnostic YouTube channel, which is sort of a nascent YouTube channel. Don't do Facebook. Stay away from that. So those are the 3 places that you can find me. And again, I'd like to thank you, Mike. This has been, I can't believe we're bumping up against 2 hours. How fast this has moved.
Yeah, it went quick. It went real quick.
Because we can go off on a million. There's so much that is evolving off of this. It's when you really see the bigger picture that everything seems to rotate off of this like centrifugally, but we're talking about the axis of the centrifugal wheel.
Yeah.
And you can see how it all branches out, and we can bring it right up to the current day. It's almost like there isn't. It's what happened 300 years ago is as relevant today or more than you'd ever think.
Well, and maybe when we come back, one of the shows that we can do, we could talk about the shape of the Earth.
That would be nice. I thought it was
and we can connect the Jesuits to the story.
Yeah.
That'd be great if we could do that. I'd love to do that.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. All right, you guys, look, it's been a great discussion, really. I really appreciate connecting with you. Jamie, thank you so much for emailing me and saying that let's connect. All right, gentlemen, have a great evening.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again, Mike.
And that concludes another Sage of Quay interview, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Links to my guests' websites and social media are listed in the show notes below. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can get to the blog by typing in sageofquayradio.blogspot.com or simply head over to our hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.